In this video, I'm going to be talking about the matrix of religion and how to escape it. Now, what is the matrix of religion? The matrix of religion is a programming that we're either born into or we're persuaded into, and it determines how we view God, ourselves, others, and the world. And what happens is, as we're being programmed to believe a certain way, we're then led to believe that the way we see God and ourselves and others and the world is ultimate reality, and it's the highest truth. And the way I like to think about it is this. Imagine a fish that's born into a pond. Now, for that fish, as that fish is developing and aging, the older that fish gets, the more convinced that fish is going to be that that pond and everything in it is really all that there is, or ultimate reality. And all the other fish in the pond with that fish have that same view. And so it strengthens and it emphasizes the view and perspectives and beliefs of the fish that we're talking about, that's born into that pond. And little does that fish know, but there's actually many other ponds, and then there's lakes, and there's rivers, and there's streams, and then there's the vast ocean. And outside that pond, that fish that we're talking about was born into, in these other ponds and lakes and rivers and streams and in the ocean, life is a lot different. And so what is perceived to be ultimate reality by that one fish in that one pond is totally different for another fish in another pond, and so on. And the fish will never know that unless it actually moves to another pond, or unless it goes into a lake or another body of water to see that, hey, life and reality and God and the way I view myself and others and the world and this narrative that I've been led to believe about the way things are in life is actually very, very subjective, and it's very much a byproduct of the way that I was specifically programmed. But it's not like that for all these other fish all over the different ponds and bodies of water. And so that's kind of what it's like with the matrix of religion. We are born into a belief structure, and typically, if we're born into it, the people around us, so our family members and our friends and our community, typically holds that same belief structure. And so that strengthens our confidence in that belief structure. And as we get older and as we develop, we end up really being convinced. And again, it's a subconscious programming that only strengthens over time. And so if this is something that we've been in for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, it's going to be very, very hard to convince us otherwise that, number one, there is another way to view God and ourselves and others and the world. And number two, that these other perspectives and these other views may hold a truth that we've been missing in the belief structure that we were programmed into. And that's it's something that all of us have to ask ourselves. And so this is, in order to escape this matrix, it starts with being honest with ourselves and really asking the question, like, okay, everything that I believe about God, myself, others, and the world, did that come from what I decided to learn for myself? And did that come from my independent thinking and research and studying? Or was it just something that was given to me and told to me, and I didn't really have a choice on whether or not I wanted to believe it? I had to believe it. And then here's the big thing, and this is really how you determine whether or not it's the matrix of religion. And that is, with that belief structure that was given to me and told to me that I had to believe, was there some kind of condition or fear attached to it? What do I mean by that? Was there some kind of obligation that said, in order to, in this belief structure, you must do this in order for something to happen. You must follow these commandments or rules in order for God to bless you and bring you into heaven one day. And then number two, the fear, was there a fear attached to it in the sense of, hey, if you don't believe this, if you don't adhere to these rules and commandments and what we're telling you, then you're going to be punished, and there's going to be some kind of afterlife punishment like eternal hell or something like that. If that's the case, then you can be sure that that is the matrix of religion. That's part of the system, and it looks different in different, I guess, religions. But ultimately, in this matrix, in this programming, which, by the way, the matrix of religion is simply a matrix inside of a matrix. It's a matrix inside of this 3D world matrix that we're living in. Maybe that's another video. I can get into that more. But today, we're focusing on the matrix of religion. So two things. It's this obligation, this condition, and then this fear that's attached to it. And so ultimately, the matrix of religion is rooted in a system of reward and punishment. And typically, there's a belief that there is a deity, a God, a higher power that's up in the sky, up in the heavens somewhere, who's always watching us and he's always judging us. And then there's some kind of final judgment at the end of time where this deity decides whether or not we get to spend eternity in heaven or in hell. And that's honestly, that's really the root of this matrix. It's a system of reward and punishment. The second thing about it is that it's rooted in separation, which all these 3 points that I'm going to mention. I'm on number 2. These all 3 points, they're all kind of connected. And so number 2 is separation. There's distance, there's this infinite space between us and the divine, between us and God. And so something has to happen in order for us to be united with God, because fundamentally we are separated. Now, this leads me to the third point. Why are we separated? We're separated according to this matrix, according to the programming, because who we are at the deepest level, fundamentally, is inherently sinful. Okay? So we believe that the deepest truth about ourselves is that there is something wrong with us. Therefore, we are separated from God, and God is going to judge us based upon who we are, unless, here's the condition, we do something, we fix this inherent sin nature about ourselves. Now, for many of you who grew up or were programmed or persuaded into this matrix of religion, you're going to hear me saying these things, and there might be something within you, there might be a thought that arises that says, well, yeah, like that's what the Bible says, and this is the truth, and but here's the thing. Again, if what I'm saying and these doctrines and these dogmas of separation and divine judgment and original sin or whatever, this is a pond. This is just one pond, one programming. And like I said in the beginning of the video, if you're in it, which I was in it for, I guess 20 years, I was born into it, programmed into it. And when I was in it, I thought that this was everything and that this was the ultimate truth. Why? Because it was my programming. It was the way I saw myself and others and God and the world. And there was no way anyone could tell me different. Okay? And so it was, so thinking about it, if what I'm saying to you right now, if someone would have been saying this to me, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, that person's a heretic. They're a false teacher. Why? Because that was part of my programming. You see, that the programming trains you, it programs you to react and to defend the programming. And it trains you to pretty much label anyone who goes against that programming as deceived, as wrong, as a heretic, or, possessed by the devil. There's all these different ways of labeling people or any other belief structures that oppose the belief structure that you were programmed with in the matrix. That's how it works. So I just want to say I understand. Like if some of this stuff is like, well, wait, this is, if you're having a hard time understanding, or if you're having a hard time receiving this because there's still some of that old programming stuck in the subconscious, I totally get it. But the point of this video, which I'm getting to, is to walk you through. It's to teach you how to escape this matrix entirely, because it is possible, and I'm speaking from experience. And I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is definitely worth it, and it absolutely leads to true liberation. And so, like I was saying, I grew up in it. I was programmed in it. I was born in Catholicism, and then my family left the Catholic Church, became evangelical, and I've told this story a bunch in other videos, so I'm not going to get into it too much as far as my background in Christianity or my background in fundamentalist religion, because, and I talk about this in other videos too, every religion has different approaches. There's the mystical approach, and then there's the fundamentalist approach. And typically with the fundamentalist approach is where we get this matrix programming of religion. So one of the things with the programming of the matrix of religion is, like I said, because of this reward punishment system, and because you believe you're inherently sinful, there's something wrong with you, you have to please God, you have to convince God that you're being good, or something has to happen in order for you to be spiritually regenerated. But even after you're spiritually regenerated, like born again or baptized or whatever the method is, there is still this subconscious programming of, hey, well, even though I'm saved, even though I'm in now, what about this? And what if I feel this? And what if I do this? And so I'm glad I'm thinking of this, because I can remember after I was saved, which that happened a few times for me. I thought I had to keep getting saved just to make sure, I would often find myself going back to this old programming that I originally had, which was sin consciousness, separation consciousness, fear of judgment, fear of being punished. And so even after I was saved and a part of the body of Christ, I would often wonder, and I would often think, well, what happens if I sin now? Or what happens if I'm committing all these sins and then Jesus comes back and I'm not raptured, or something happens to me, I die before I have a chance to repent of these sins? What's going to happen when I have to face God and I have to face this final judgment? And it used to really bother me. And I had OCD and anxiety, and so you mix the matrix of religion with someone that has OCD and anxiety, it is not a good mix. I spent many nights without sleep, just with immense worry and fear, with all these intrusive thoughts, OCD, about what was going to happen to me if I have to stand before God and there's unrepented sin and all these different things. So, for me, growing up in this, it was, and this tends to happen for a lot of people, even after I got saved, even after I had some confidence that I was accepted and loved by God, I was still on a mission to perform perfectly. I was striving for holiness. I was striving for righteousness. And this came with me always trying to be the good Christian. And as a matter of fact, at my school at the time, actually there was an award called, it was like the most Christian student. And I got that award multiple times. Why? Because, especially having OCD, I was always trying to be perfect and holy and righteous and on my best behavior. Why? Because, number one, the condition, I thought this is what was required of me by God. And then number two, because of the fear. Well, what happens if I wasn't being like this? Well, God would be upset. God would potentially judge me and punish me. And that's the last thing I wanted. So I would put on this front. I would act like I was this perfect Christian boy all the time. But the reality of it was, within me, I was facing a lot of torment with anxiety and fear and the OCD, and a lot of shame and guilt, because when I would make a mistake, when I would sin, the amount of guilt that came with that was just, it was a lot, especially for a young kid to have to face that guilt almost every day. Why? Because I was putting so much emphasis, and I was putting so much of my focus and energy and attention into performing, into striving for holiness, into putting up this front of I'm this righteous Christian boy. And while doing that, what happens when we do that, when we're striving for some kind of perfect religious or sacred behavior, what happens is that we're actually repressing the other side of us, the darkness, the shadow self, and the anger and the negative emotions and the things that we're not allowing to arise, and we're not allowing for these things to heal because we're not feeling it. We must feel it to heal it. But if we're constantly repressing the shadow, then what happens is it creates this tension, this blockage of energy within us. And with that just comes more anger and more fear and depression and bitterness and jealousy and all these other negative emotions. Why? Because they're being repressed. Why are they being repressed? Because we're so fixated and focused on performing and behaving a certain way in order to attain some kind of external divine acceptance and love. And that's the programming. That's what the programming is training us to do. And so what I realized was this. For me, when I had my spiritual awakening, which I know I'm fast forwarding like 10, 15 years from the point I was just talking about when I was a kid and when I got the award for being the most Christian boy. After my spiritual awakening, there was something that happened. And during that time, I started to have this thought. I started to see. I started to believe differently than the way I was programmed. But with that, with these new beliefs, with these new perspectives on God, myself, others in the world, reality, life, whatever, there was still that subconscious programming that I had been in for the past 15, 20 years of my life. And so there was a time after the awakening, once I woke up and realized that, hey, what do I mean by awakening? I mean, the moment I realized that I had been in some kind of a religious matrix and that matrix wasn't ultimate reality. When I realized that there was other ponds and other bodies of water and there was the ocean that I was completely unaware of my entire life. That's what I mean by my awakening. But after my awakening, I still had to deal with the programming that was still within me because it was ingrained into my subconscious mind. So here's the question. How do we transcend that? How do we completely let go of the programming and begin to live free? Well, the answer is this. The answer is we have to discover our authentic, true self. Because the thing about the religious programming or the matrix of religion is that it completely took away, it prohibited us from experiencing who we really are, and it led us to believe that we were someone that we are not, and there was always a focus on trying to be someone, trying to be perfect, trying to perform, trying to fit some kind of standard or criteria of the commandments and the rules and the doctrines. And so we were prohibited, there was something preventing us from being who we truly are, our authentic self. And everything is energy, okay? And this energy is vibrating at different frequencies. And I know I'm making a huge jump into more of the quantum world, quantum physics, but you're going to understand why I'm saying this, because this is important. Everything's energy, and there's high vibrations and there's low vibrations from this energy. And when we are in the matrix of religion, we are living from a very low vibrational frequency. And with that low vibrational frequency comes these feelings, these emotions of anger, of fear, of worry, of shame, guilt. Okay, and so as long as we're feeling those things, or as long as we have those negative emotions buried within our subconscious, then that's the vibrational frequency that we're going to be predominantly living from. But on the other hand, authenticity is a very high vibrational frequency, as well as peace and joy and acceptance and love, unconditional love. And so when we start to let go of who we think we are, when we realize that, okay, we've been conditioned to live according to this matrix of religion, and with that, the ego has been merged. So the ego, which is the false self, has taken on this identity of I'm a Christian, or I'm a this, or I'm a, whatever religion we're a part of. We identify with that role, or with that identity, or with that attachment to the religion, or to the matrix of that religion. And then from there, we end up staying in that low vibrational frequency because we're not being who we really are. And when you're not being who you really are, then what you're programmed to do is to only listen to external guidance and external counseling from different religious leaders. In other words, like it's frowned upon if you decide to listen to your own heart. And of course, in the matrix of religion, any kind of talk about listen to your heart or trust yourself is deemed as one of the most sinful things you can do. And of course, they have verses that go along with the program, with what they're telling you. But that's the one thing that you're never supposed to do, is listen to your own heart, listen to yourself. Why? Because one of the main pillars of the programming is what? You are inherently sinful. There is something wrong with you. So don't listen to yourself. Don't listen to your heart, because that's going to lead you into trouble, into destruction. So with authenticity, when you're discovering who you really are, when you're letting go of who you think you are, and you're discovering your true authentic self, the awakening experience is when you realize that, number one, you're not sinful. Okay, you are divine. You were one with God. You're not separated from God. You're one with God in everything. You're infinite. You're eternal. It's this. It's the true self, not the false self that you're awakening to, and it's beyond the body, the mind, the ego, space, and time. When you awaken to that, and then you can live from your authentic self, from the true self, right? Then what happens is you discover that I can actually trust this intuitive heart that I have. Not the ego, not the voice in my head, not these mixed feelings and emotions, but behind all of that, there's this intuitive heart. There's the intuition. There's this guidance, this inner compass that's always been there, and it's always been trying to lead me along the way, but I've been ignoring it because I've been programmed in this matrix of I have to listen to what these external religious leaders are saying because they have all the answers, or some kind of external holy book, or some kind of external list of rules and commandments for behavior modification. Okay, so making that shift from who we think we are, the false self, to discovering our true self, our authentic self, living from authenticity, what that does is that it raises our vibration to a high vibrational frequency, and that's the key. How do you move out the matrix? Well, you move out of the vibrational frequency that the matrix is operating from. And if it's keeping people in a low vibrational frequency, then there's your answer. That's what's running that matrix. It's relying, it's the whole thing about it is that it needs the people to be programmed, and part of this programming is keeping the people in the lower vibrational frequencies, because if they're in the lower vibrational frequencies, then they're going to keep trusting and relying solely on the external authorities of religion. That's going to keep the control, and that's going to keep the system, the program going. But when people start to transcend that and they raise their vibration to these higher vibrational frequencies, and they start living authentically, and they start learning how to trust their intuitive heart, their true self, then that's the beginning of freedom. Now, the question is, people will say, well, if we're living from our authentic selves and we're trusting our heart and trusting our intuition, then does that mean we can just do whatever we want? And that means, there's no more commandments, there's no more rules, so anything goes. Is that what that means? No, because here's the thing. Once you awaken to your true self, the next step from that, and I talk about this a lot, is you recognize that the true self is not separated. Separation consciousness was part of that matrix of religion. But now we're into the true self, and with the true self, we realize that everything is one, everything is interconnected. And so the true self is not this separate self. It's one with all. And there's only one true self. And this true self is pure consciousness. It's pure being. And when you have that experience, when you have that awakening, you realize that there is no separation. Separation is completely an illusion. It's a part of this matrix that we're living in, and not just the matrix of religion, but this 3D matrix that we are perceiving through our five senses. And so we awaken to oneness, and we awaken to unity consciousness. Now, unity consciousness is the perspective of God, ourselves, others, and the world from the reality of the true self. What do I mean by that? Well, when we're living from unity consciousness instead of separation consciousness, as we're waking up to our true self, then we come to know that what I'm doing to others, I'm doing to myself. Why? Because we're all interconnected. We're all one. And so the last thing you'd want to do is you would never want to do something that would harm someone, because in harming someone else, you are harming yourself. And here's the thing: once you have transcended to that high vibrational frequency, you're gonna be in unconditional love. And if you're in unconditional love, the last thing you're gonna want to do is to do something that is going to be destructive or harmful to anything, yourself, others, the environment, anything, because that's the complete opposite of unconditional love. Unconditional love and unity consciousness are pretty much one and the same. But separation consciousness and fear and anxiety is where the harmful, destructive behavior comes from. And so when you get to these, when you start to experience these higher vibrational frequencies, which, by the way, it's not about attaining some level of higher vibration, because the natural tendency for us as divine beings is high vibrational. And so the way we experience this high vibrational frequency, which is already within us, is not by trying to climb some, spiritual ladder or something. It's by letting go of what is keeping us chained down to these lower vibrational frequencies. And so the key, like I say, is letting go. It's unlearning. It's having a experience where you change your mind and you move past these old belief structures that are keeping you down in these lower vibrational frequencies. And once that happens, once you let go of that, then the chain is cut and you naturally transcend to your natural, normal levels, which is high vibe, unconditional love, peace, joy, acceptance, and all of those great things. And once you're living from there, again, you're living from unconditional love. And if you're living from unconditional love with this consciousness of oneness, then you're living out your divine self. You're living from the true self, and you're going to be living with this consciousness, with this perspective of pure love all of the time. And you're going to realize that, hey, yeah, there's differences and people see things a little bit differently than I do, but there's still this underlying interconnectedness that's holding all of us together as one. And your life is completely transformed from that point on. So that's really how you escape the matrix of religion. Number one, you realize that, hey, this is not ultimate reality. This is a program inside of a program that I've been programmed with. And if I could just reach my head above the surface of the pond, maybe I could see that there's other ponds. And then if I look a little bit further, I could see some lakes and some rivers. And then if I look even beyond that, there's a vast ocean that is infinite. It's bigger than anything I could think or imagine. And in that ocean is liberation, because the beliefs of rules and commandments and judgment and all these negative emotions that are attached to it, that are living in these lower vibrational frequencies, it's not everything. It's not what life is all about. It's not ultimate reality. It's just the way I've been seeing it. It's the way I've been programmed. And the last thing I'll say is this. If you were born into the matrix of religion, know that it wasn't by accident, okay? There's a reason that you're in this. There's a reason that you're experiencing this. And the purpose of it, the purpose of going through it, the purpose of living in it is to transcend it. It's to awaken, because you're going to learn something as you move past it. You're transcending judgment, you're transcending fear, and you're stepping into unconditional love. And that's really what life is all about. Personally, I think the reason we come to this planet, the reason we incarnate, is to transcend judgment and to learn. It's a learning experience first and foremost. It's to learn how to love and how to be loved and how to live from this place of pure love, unconditional love, which again, unconditional love can only happen when we're living from unity consciousness. And if we're living from unity consciousness, we're living from a high vibrational frequency. And that's how it's all connected. That's how it all works. So it wasn't an accident. There was a purpose for it. Learn from it. Transcend the judgment. Awaken to your true self. Step into unity consciousness. And live from unconditional love. And when you live from unconditional love, your world is transformed from the inside out. And that is the key to true, authentic, spiritual evolution. So that's it for today. If you have found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.